When my husband died, everyone told me the same thing. They told me that it would get better, that time heals all wounds, that the pain would fade, that one day I would wake up and the grief would be gone, and I would be myself again, and life would go back to how it was before. They meant it kindly, but they were wrong, every one of them, and I want to tell you the truth that took me 4 years and a great deal of suffering to learn. Grief does not leave, it does not shrink, and it does not fade, and it never truly goes away. What happens is something else entirely, something far more beautiful and far more bearable once you understand it. You do not get smaller grief, you grow big enough to carry it. My name is Margaret Elaine. I am 83 years old, and this is the truest thing I know about losing someone you love. I spent the first year or two of my widowhood waiting for the grief to lift, the way everyone had promised it would. I treated it like an illness I was meant to recover from, and I kept checking myself, the way you might check a wound to see if it is healing, expecting it to be a little smaller each month, a little less raw. And when it was not, when a year had passed and then 2, and the grief was still as large and as sharp as ever, I began to think that something was wrong with me. I thought I was failing at grief. I thought I was doing it incorrectly, that other people somehow managed to heal and move on, and I was simply broken, stuck, unable to recover the way I was supposed to. I cannot tell you how much that added to my suffering, the shame of believing I was grieving wrong on top of the grief itself. It was Ruth, my dear friend, who has walked this road longer than I have, who finally told me the truth. We were sitting in my kitchen one afternoon, and I confessed to her that I was frightened, because it had been 2 years, and I did not feel any better, and I did not understand why I could not move on. And Ruth set down her tea, and she looked at me and she said, "Margaret, no one ever moves on. That is a lie they tell us. The grief does not get smaller, you get bigger." And those simple words changed everything for me. They were the first true thing anyone had said to me about grief since the day Henry died. Let me try to explain it the way I have come to understand it. Imagine your grief as a stone, a great heavy stone you must carry. In the beginning, the stone is enormous, and you are small, and the weight of it crushes you to the ground. You cannot stand under it. You cannot move. The grief is the whole of your life, filling every moment, leaving room for nothing else. And everyone keeps promising you that the stone will get smaller, that one day you will be able to set it down. But the stone never gets smaller. Not really. The grief over losing a person you loved for 51 years is exactly as large now, 4 years on, as it was the day he died. If I let myself feel it fully, in the quiet of an evening, it is every bit as heavy as it ever was. But here is the secret, the thing Ruth taught me. While the stone stays the same size, you grow. Slowly, without even noticing, you grow larger and stronger around the grief. Your life, which was once entirely filled by the stone, begins to grow new things alongside it. A friendship here, a small joy there, a new routine, a garden tended, a purpose found. And as your life grows bigger, the stone, though it has not shrunk by a single ounce, takes up less of the whole. It is still there, it will always be there, but it is no longer the entirety of your world. You have grown a life big enough to hold it. That is what healing actually is. Not the disappearance of the grief, but the growth of everything around it. I think of my own life now like a great jar. In the beginning, the jar was small, and the grief filled it completely, all the way to the brim, leaving no room for anything else. Every waking moment was grief. There was nothing else in the jar. But over these 4 years, the jar itself has grown larger. Into it I have poured new friendships and quiet mornings and the small pleasures of my solitary life and my work at the church and the love of my friend Ruth and 100 other things. The grief is still in the jar, the same amount of grief exactly. But the jar is so much bigger now that the grief, while it is always present, no longer fills it. There is room now for joy alongside the sorrow. There is room for a life. And that, I have come to believe, is the most that any of us who have truly loved and lost can hope for. Not the emptying of the jar, but the growing of it. This understanding freed me from the terrible shame of believing I was grieving wrong. Because once I understood that the grief was never going to leave, I could stop waiting for it to. I could stop measuring myself against the false promise of recovery and feeling like a failure when I did not recover. The grief was not a sign that I was broken. It was a sign that I had loved. And the goal was never to get rid of it. The goal was simply to grow strong enough and to build a life large enough to carry it with grace. I want to be honest with you about how this actually feels, because the metaphors make it sound tidier than it is. The truth is that the grief still comes in waves, even now, even after 4 years. I will go along for weeks, my life full and busy, the stone carried easily, and then something will catch me unawares. A song on the radio that we used to dance to, the smell of the particular soap he used, a man across the room who turns his head the way Henry did, and suddenly the wave rises up out of nowhere and knocks me flat, and for an hour or a day, the grief is once again the whole of my world, as fresh and as raw as the night he died. People think these waves are a sign of going backward, of failing to heal. They are nothing of the sort. They are simply the stone, reminding you it is still there, as it always will be. The waves never stop coming, but they come less often, and you learn to ride them, and you learn that they will pass, and that you will still be standing when they do. That is not failure. That is grief, doing exactly what grief does, in a life that has grown big enough to weather it. And here is the part I most want you to understand, the part that turns this whole hard truth into something like a comfort. If grief is the price of love, then I do not want my grief to leave. Think about what it would mean if the grief truly went away, if one day I woke up and felt nothing, if Henry's death no longer moved me at all. It would mean that the love had died too. The grief is not separate from the love. The grief is the love, continuing, with nowhere to go now that he is gone. To grieve him still 4 years on is to love him still. And so I have made my peace with carrying this stone for the rest of my days, because the stone is made of love, and I would not set it down even if I could. I do not want to stop missing him. Missing him is how I keep loving him. The day my grief leaves will be the day my love leaves, and I pray that day never comes. So when people tell you that it will get better, that time heals, that you will move on, smile at them, for they mean well, but know in your heart that they are wrong. You will not move on, not in the way they mean. You will not leave your beloved behind and return to who you were. That person is gone, and so is that life, and pretending otherwise only deepens the pain. What will happen instead is far better. You will grow. You will grow stronger and larger year by year, and you will build a life around your grief, a life with room in it for joy and purpose, and even, eventually, happiness. And the grief will live within that life, always present, no longer all-consuming, the way a single deep note can sound beneath an entire symphony without drowning out the music. You will learn to carry what you cannot put down. That is the whole of it. That is how we survive the loss of the ones we cannot live without. If you are in the early days, when the stone is enormous and you are still so small beneath it, when the grief is the whole of your jar and you cannot imagine it ever being otherwise, I want you to hold on to this. You will not always be this small. You cannot feel it yet, but you are already beginning to grow. Every day you survive, every small thing you let back into your life, every kindness you accept, and every morning you get out of bed, you are growing, a little, around your grief. It will not happen quickly, and it will not happen the way they promised, but it will happen. One day you will look up and realize that, while the stone is exactly as heavy as it ever was, you have grown strong enough to carry it, and to walk, and even, sometimes, to dance again, with the weight of your love riding gently on your shoulders. Grief does not leave, my dear. Stop waiting for it to. It is not a wound that heals, but a love that endures. You will not get smaller grief. You will grow big enough to carry it. I am 83 years old and I carry mine still, every single day, and it is the most precious thing I own. It is all the love I had for him, gathered up into one heavy, holy stone, and I will carry it gladly to the end of my days. So will you. I promise you. So will you.